All right, what did you think of that story? I thought it was a great little parable story with a lesson where Jesus taught us something really important. And before we talk about that, I wanted to kind of do the little story with you. So I thought I would find myself a rock, I would find myself some sand, and I would get myself some blocks to build a house. And then, of course, I'm going to have my storm, which is in this picture right here. So the first thing I'm going to do is build my little house, just like the two men in the story that Jesus told. He had each of them, they were building houses. So there's my house on the rock. And then I'm going to I found some sand, and I'm going to build my other little house on the sand. And here I am, two houses. Now, we learned from Jesus' story, didn't we, which one of these was really built in a better situation. So let's watch what happens. Here's our storm. And I'm going to have the storm hit the house that's built on the rock. Look at that. The storm is coming, but that rock isn't going anywhere, and the house is still in the same exact spot. Now I'm going to have the same storm come and hit the house that's built on the sand. Oh no! The house completely fell over. That wasn't even much of a storm. But do you see here that this is exactly what Jesus was telling us in that story that he told his disciples? He was saying that the man who built his house on the rock had built his house on a stronger foundation than the man who built his house in the sand. And so here, this lesson that Jesus is telling his disciples is really about foundation. Foundation is a big fancy word for the thing that you set your building on. Your house is built on a foundation, and that foundation is what allows everything that goes up from the ground up to be strong and sturdy, to be able to withstand strong storms that might come through. And when something is built on a foundation that isn't very strong, it doesn't give the house anything really stable and substantial to sit on. So when we think about building our lives, we want to start on a good, solid foundation. Jesus tells us that the rock is the kind of foundation that we want, not the sand. So let's think about what is a strong foundation for our faith. Our questions for our hide and seek questions today for our lesson, that's our very first question. What makes a strong foundation for our faith? What are the things that we need in our lives to build up on? I want you to think through with your family the kinds of things that we can do to make sure that what we're standing on with God is strong and not made of something wimpy and flimsy like sand. Well, now I got sand on my fingers. And the second question that we're going to discover in our hide and seek questions is, why does Jesus want our foundation to be strong? Jesus took the time to tell this story to his disciples, and then to have those disciples put that story in the Bible, 2 different places. We are reading about it in Matthew, but you'll find it in Luke. So if the story is in there 2 times, it must mean that Jesus really wants us to understand it. Why does he want our foundation to be strong? Why is that important to Jesus? So think that through with your families. Now, as we study this idea of parables for the next several weeks, we do have a hide and seek verse that we're going to be learning and adding to each week, just like we did in our last series. This time, our hide and seek verse comes from Psalms. Last time it came from Proverbs, but today we're in Psalms. You'll find it in Psalm 119, verse 18. And here it is. This is what we're going to learn. Open my eyes that I may see wonderful things in your law. And as we're asking God to open up our understanding so that as we learn these stories that Jesus told to his disciples, we would see the wonderful things that come out of it. What is it that Jesus wants us to understand about foundation? So I'm going to move this aside just so that I can write in our book, because our unit is called Let Me Tell You a Story. So we're going to make a storybook, and it's going to be full of the lessons that we learn about the parables. So our first parable is this parable of the 2 builders. Let's think together about what it is that Jesus wanted us to get from that story. And I think it must have something to do with foundation. So the notes that I'm going to write to myself here in this story are that Jesus wants us to have a strong foundation. And you all, in your questions that you discuss with your family, are going to get into why. Why does Jesus want us to have a strong foundation? What difference does it make in our lives as believers, in the ways that we share our love with others, and in the way that we grow and understand God better? What does our foundation have to do with all of that? All right, so we have some resources there for you. I have a coloring page where you get to color in a picture of the two different builders, and then you'll find a link there that has so many different activities, different kinds of things, and they're printable. So you might look through all the various activities that are there and pick one or two that you'd like to do and print them, or maybe you want to do all of them, I don't know. But we're going to keep exploring this idea of what it is that we're standing on. What is our faith in? What is it rooted in? And before we start adding to it, before we grow stronger and stronger as people, we want to make sure that we are able to grow stronger and stronger in our spirits. Our bodies might get big and strong, but we want our spirits to get big and strong too. And that comes from starting on a strong foundation with Jesus and learning what it is to be sure that we have that we know what we believe, that we understand how to communicate with him, and we learn all of the things that reflect who Jesus is in our lives. All right, well, I'll be with you again, and I will have the answer to your riddle on Wednesday. We'll dig a little deeper next week in another parable. Have a good week.